See anybody here? Let's see where we're at today. We are having, hi, good morning. Today is May 11th. We're having a workshop this morning. It's 10 a.m. I'd like to call this workshop to order. It's a pay and class study, and I'll lead us in the invocation and the pledge. If you are able, please stand with us. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for today and thank you for your many blessings. Lord, as always, I pray for wisdom in our decisions and that we have open minds to what the citizens present to us, and today for this pay study. And Lord, I'm thankful for the employees who work so hard day in and day out. Pray for patience and ask for forgiveness, and that you're with us today and put a hedge of protection around our families. In your name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Miss Amy, will you do roll call for us, please?
Yes, ma'am. This is a public workshop of the Citrus County Board of County Commissioners this 11th day of May, 2023. In attendance are Chair Ruthie Schleybaugh, First Vice Chair Holly Davis, Second Vice Chair Rebecca Bays, Commissioners Jeff Kennard and Diana Finnegan, County Administrator Steve Howard, and County Attorney Denise A. Diamond Lynn.
Thank you. Okay, we're at number B of the agenda, letter B of the agenda, and we are going to discuss the discussion on pay and class study. Mr. Howard,
Yes,
you will?
if I can start, please. Thank you. We are just over 100 days into working on accomplishing the goals established within the Strategic Planning Policy Action Agenda 2023 Targets for Action, which we reached consensus with you January the 25th. We're actually about day 106. Not very far into that. This truly is the year of Make It Happen. I'm excited in the future as we do a performance review of all the goals that are being accomplished across this county. The class and pay study was one of those goals with a due date of May 11th, 2023 to present those findings, and staff has met that target today. The county employees are our greatest assets. Employee recognition is important and critical for what they do across this county. And also employee retention is also a cost savings. They keep the county running. I look forward to working with each of you to ensure this plan is fully funded and implemented. And at this time, if we could bring forward our consultant to discuss that. We appreciate his efforts. I will tell you, staff has worked multiple weeks on this to ensure they scrub the data. So this has been a team effort to get here today, but I do thank the board for their efforts to get us here today. Across the nation, there's issues, they're struggling with employment and things like that, and we're right there on this opportunity. We're at a pivotal moment for this county, and again, the employees are our greatest assets, so I strongly actually encourage you to ensure that this plan is fully adopted. Thank you.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, Chairman, Chairwoman, Board, Steve, and staff, and everybody that's in attendance here today? This is special for me. This is special for me because I grew up coming here from the time I was about 6 years old. We actually had a place on the Withlacoochee River that was about 10 miles down the road from here. I was just telling June, I think I'm going to swing by and see the old place after I leave here from this today. So, you know, I get the opportunity to travel all over the country doing this job, and I love local government, so that makes it cool. But when I get the opportunity to be with what I would consider like my extended family, it makes it that much more special. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be with you this morning. The team that you have here is extraordinary. They have asked the tough questions. They have challenged us every step of the way and have been a true collaborator in what we've done here. And we feel like we've got a transformative study and recommendations for you, and we're very excited to share those with you. So we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to talk a little bit about the process, and that process basically involved an assessment of the current conditions. We established what the compensation philosophy was, and then we had some core deliverables of benefits and compensation. Where do you stand to market? Are you at market, ahead of market, behind market? How can you inform the decisions that you need to make as policymakers with the understanding that by the time decisions get to you, all the easy decisions are already gone? And so how can you make those tough decisions based on good data? And we feel like it's especially the salary piece that we're in good shape. And then ultimately, we're going to talk about recommendations, the implementation options, and the associated costs. So to this point, it started with a kickoff call. That's how the process started with your leadership team. And then we went through numerous meetings with staff, but really the main initiation, if you will, of the engagement was the on-site outreach. We came here and we did orientation sessions, we did focus groups with supervisors, non-supervisors, department directors. We got a lot of robust feedback, and then it went directly into our job assessment tool survey. And I'm going to show you some of the results of that in a moment, which were far ahead of the national average. That really allowed us to get an understanding of what folks do here and what they do in service to the county. We did a benefits analysis, we did a compensation analysis, and then ultimately we took all of that data together and galvanized it together into the study findings and ultimately the recommendation that we have for the board this morning. The remaining steps that we have are to memorialize everything that we've done for you and present those study findings in the form of a written report. So we'll have a draft and then ultimately a final report that will be reviewed by your staff and delivered so that it can anybody that wants to read what we've done here as a result of this engagement will be available to them. We'll also update the job descriptions to where we have legally compliant job descriptions that align with the roles and responsibilities that each employee here is doing. That's something we heard quite a bit during outreach, is that maybe some of the job descriptions don't exactly align with the work that's being done, and this will help to update that and modernize that as well. And then we'll do a training with your staff to where you can maintain the program going forward. One of the things we noticed when we reviewed the current conditions was that we had 47 pay grades with ranging different spreads. That's basically your pay range from the minimum that you would pay someone up to the maximum of their range. And we noticed something that definitely is worth mentioning, and that is that at the time we had 84, a little bit more than 80 open positions. And turnover is incredibly expensive. Typically at the hourly rate, at the introductory positions, you're going to be at around 50% of the annual salary would be the cost for turnover. You get into those leadership positions, you could be at 1.5 times salary. So the fact that you as a board decided to move forward with a study that could bring you to market competitive and could solve some of those wage issues that you have is going to save millions. It is going to save you an extraordinary amount of money, I think, over a 2 and 3 year period. We're not talking about a 10-year period. It's going to be an extraordinary savings, not to mention what it will do for morale if you get the money right. We're talking 25% turnover, 186 new employees in the last 12 months trailing. That is an extraordinary number.
Bless you.
Bless you. See, we start talking about turnover and people start sneezing. So I put in those turnover costs that we went over there. Something else I wanted to highlight on the assessment of current conditions when we got here. If you split your employees into 4 different brackets, that first bracket represents basically what the closest point would be to the starting salary. And you'll notice that you have 77% of your employees in that first quartile. That basically means that you bring everyone in at the minimum, and then we really don't advance them in their pay range. They never have an opportunity to get to the midpoint of their pay range or the maximum. And so what happens is, let's say you bring me in today at what is the minimum of today's pay range, and then you as an elected board decide in 3 years' time that you're going to give a cost of living adjustment. So now we have a new minimum, and you hire people in at the new minimum. What you've created is wage compression, where you have someone like me that's been working here 3 years making the same amount or less than somebody who's come in after me. And so the solution that we're providing you with, or the recommendation that we're suggesting, this hybrid parity solution that I'll go over with you, it makes you immediately market competitive, but it also solves for wage compression, to to where you can space your employees out based on a couple of key metrics: time in their current job title and overall tenure, overall time serving Citrus County. So it solves for that wage compression, and it makes you market competitive. And so those numbers, those percentages would look a lot different. The philosophy that we talked about with your team that we felt aligned with the strategic plan that Mr. Howard mentioned a few moments ago, that we wanted to be competitive with market. We wanted a pay plan that was fair and competitive, flexible, but also fiscally responsible, making sure that every decision we make has a financial cost associated with it. An open range plan, which basically means you can either have an open range plan or a step plan. You have currently an open range plan. We believe that it was best to stick with that open range plan. And then employees are moved based on overall time and performance. The benefits summary, we went out to market to compare your benefits offerings in the areas of healthcare, dental, vision, retirement, holidays, tuition reimbursement, things of that nature. We were able to get market data back from 9 peers. You see those represented there. And on the whole, like what we heard from folks in outreach, that they believe that benefits are one of the main reasons they came to work here and one of the reasons that they've stayed. And it has really become more and more of a decision point for employees in the public sector, because you used to have a clear separation between public sector and private sector, right? We might know that we're not paying an engineer that works for Citrus County the same amount that we're paying an engineer that works for a private engineering firm, but you're going to have a better quality of life if you're working for Citrus County. You're going to go home at 5 o'clock. You're not going to be working nights and weekends too often, and your benefits are going to be next level. Well, now what we're seeing is the private sector is closing that benefits gap. And when they're closing that benefits gap, it's important to remember that if you want to maintain your competitive market position, to keep an eye on your employer contribution for those benefits. Specifically, I would have you take a look at, and I don't know why this is rotating forward, but there we go. I just went into the future there for a second. Particularly the dependent care. Right now, I think that your contribution, whether it's an individual, doesn't pay any cost for premium, it's free. But if you move into, you have a spouse, you have dependent care, I think you're contributing around $600 a month. That puts you behind the market. And so that's going to be something that as you move forward in your policy directives and strategic goals, you're going to want to be taking a look at how much you're contributing as a county to employees' dependent care. One small recommendation that I feel provides a lot of bang for the buck, and that is holidays and tuition reimbursement, specifically holidays. I'm starting to hear from my clients as I go around the country that staffing is an issue. Hey, we've grown, Rob, and we have the same number of people, but staff-wise, but the number of folks that we're servicing is far greater. And so there's some strain to the staff. And after COVID, it became even more so. And so what's one of the ways for very little cost that you can align the employee's time off with time that your constituents would not be looking for services? And typically that's around the holidays. So if you have existing holidays that you would think in the local community that they would normally have those days off and they wouldn't be looking for government services, you may want to look at adding some of those holidays to give your employees time off that aligns with when there'd be a minimum request for services. And that would also allow them some more time, better quality of life, better work-life balance, and it's a minimal cost to the county for how much benefit you get and rest for your employees. Tuition reimbursement is another big one, especially for the millennial generation. If you want to recruit the next level of talent, the next generation of talent, you need to make sure that employee development is an important piece of what you're doing. And I would offer up that tuition reimbursement, yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but could you just go back? Oh, no, that's the slide. It's hard for me to see. What do you mean, like New Year's Day we have 100% and that we pay, but then for Good Friday you have 0% and that we pay?
So for Good Friday, for example, on the right are the holidays that you currently offer.
Yes.
And if we have 0% in the peer holiday section, that means none of your market peers have that holiday, that they offer that one from the response that we got.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
No, it's a great question. And I think looking at that, you're wise to look at that, because if you can offer something that your market peers aren't, then that's an opportunity to get a little bit of a competitive advantage.
Okay.
And doing so, as I say, at a very low cost when you look at it.
Very good. Thank you.
Sure. And so the tuition reimbursement piece, even if that tuition reimbursement isn't directly related to the work that they're doing in their respective department, because if they're getting that education, if you are helping pay for that college or that technical school or that CDL license, guess what? They're still working with you. So your retention numbers go up. The next, we look at this job assessment tool survey that I referenced earlier, because your participation from your employees was nothing short of extraordinary. It was important to them. And we normally see numbers around 70% nationwide. So when we start seeing 95% or higher from employee participation, that tells you that everyone was very interested in the goings-on with this study, and they wanted their voice to be heard. When you look at the classification data that we got, basically we were able to capture a survey or a job assessment tool survey from almost every classification, every job title that you have here in the county. And what we use this for is we use this to help us slot these classifications into the pay plan along with the market position. And so the participation was incredible.
I'd like to know who the 5 supervisors are.
You're right, exactly. Offline, we'll provide that to you.
I was
Thank
thinking
you.
the same thing.
Well, in an overall average, I have to tell you, that's impressive.
It actually might be me because I think you said the survey and I ignored it. After I said that, I was like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. Do you really want that information? So then the compensation piece, which, in a market that's moving as fast as this one has been over the course of the last 2 years, yes, we are weighting our recommendations a little bit toward the market because of how fast it's moving. And so we did 101 benchmark classifications. Those are your job titles. For those job titles where we got at least 5 market peers, where we got data from at least 5 of the market peers, which is what we need to meet the federal guidelines, the number of matches that we got was right about 6.6 or 7, which is very robust. That's good. Not all of the peers had matches for benchmark classifications, but keep in mind when we're creating the new proposed pay plan, we are using a combination of those survey scores and the market position along with how you currently slot employees. So we use all of that together to inform our decision and get to that proposed pay plan. And all of the responses are adjusted for cost of living. Overall, at the survey minimum, because you keep routinely raising your pay ranges, the minimum, it should be no surprise, isn't too far behind market. And so you can see those numbers there. When we average all of the responses together and all of the classification titles together, you're right at about 1.1% behind market. That expands when you get to the midpoint and gets even more so when you get to the maximum.
And the maximum is the bigger counties like Pasco that has a giant annual budget.
If we look at the mix that we have of counties that we tried to include and cities that we tried to include, some of the benchmarks would be on the higher end. But when we blend all that together, like we were just looking at a Hillsborough, well, okay, that's going to skew the results, right? But when you average everything together and you have some on the lower end, and the idea was, the strategy was, do we want to look at placing you where you are to where you'll continue to be reactive in the market, or do we want to place you where you're going? And you're one of the fastest growing counties around, right? And nothing's going to stop that anytime soon. This is a popular spot. And so we wanted to try to position that market recommendation to match that or align with that. But the maximum that you see here of 12% behind market, when you get to the maximum of an employee's salary, when they should be reaching the end of their career, let's say they've worked 20, 25 years of a 30-year career, they should be approaching the maximum of their salary. When we look at the maximum of those salaries in the market compared to Citrus County, you are 12% behind. So it should be no surprise that with those 84 openings that you have, quite a few of those aren't just at the low end. It's middle management and up, because they're able to go and get 10%, 15% increases by going to one of your market competitors. Key recommendations before we get to the slide that everybody wants to see, the money slide. Key recommendations, we slightly increased the number of pay grades to where we could more accurately, or let me say, more specifically slot employees and classification titles to market. And we want to provide a reminder that even though the pay plan that we're providing you, I think takes you from around $11.70 up to $13 an hour for a starting minimum, we're probably all aware of this point, if you've been to any FACT conferences, that $15 an hour is coming, right? And so I would imagine in your local market, you could probably say in some businesses it's already here, right? You would be wise to start looking at moving closer to that $15 starting salary for your overall pay plan. But we wanted to be fiscally as prudent as we could. And so we started things at 13 and then built the pay plan up from there. We added more consistency to the range spreads and the pay ranges, and the distance between each pay grade was standardized as well. We placed employees into their new pay range, and just want to tell you how we build a pay plan is not based on individuals. It's not based on people and personalities. We build our pay plan off of individual classifications. So we have job titles, we have classifications that are placed competitively to market. And then those employees that occupied those classifications are then moved within those ranges based on a certain methodology. And the methodology that we're recommending is hybrid parity. So what the heck does hybrid parity mean, Rob? Well, hybrid parity is how we move an employee within that range. So let's say we've got an administrative assistant and we've slotted them into a pay grade that is between 30 and 50,000, okay? And they've been working here for 15 years. We would give them, in this example, we would give them credit for their hybrid years. And those hybrid years are calculated based on the amount of time that they've spent in their current job title and the amount of time that they've spent overall with Citrus County. So we give an employee 100% credit for the time that they've spent in their current job title, and then we give them 50% credit for any remaining time that they've spent with Citrus County, regardless of their job title. It truly blends together the time that they've spent in their job and the time that they've spent in service overall. And when we combine those two together, we end up with it's right around just under 10% of payroll. It affects almost every employee, and you're looking at a cost right about $2.6 million. No employees were recommended for a decrease in salary as a result of our work. And we feel that that's very important to mention. And the other thing that we would mention is that there are some employees in the plan that, because they're already paid at or above where hybrid parity would put them, they're not recommended for an adjustment. Now, that doesn't mean that that they are paid competitively to market, and they are slotted into the pay plan based on that same methodology. But there could be instances where certain employees are not recommended for an adjustment because they're already making more than what the methodology would place them.
What was the percentage of that?
Well, I mean, it's less than 100 employees, so it's not a whole lot, yeah. I mean, when you have so many employees that are at the minimum of your range, and when we adjust those ranges, it's going to move folks. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that right now, you're really not moving employees based on the time that they've worked here at Citrus County. You pretty much move them in an all or nothing fashion. The board votes to give a cost of living adjustment, and the whole pay plan moves up. But where they move inside that pay plan doesn't change currently, very rarely. And so that's what we're correcting. Hybrid parity takes those employees and it moves them into their pay range based on that combination of time that they've spent in their job and time that they've spent overall with the county. So if I've been here 1 year, I might be moved just barely into my pay range. If I've been here 15 years, I'm going to be moved farther into my pay range. And it starts to create it eliminates wage compression, but it also creates a healthy separation between those employees based on the criteria that I've mentioned.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to ask you about that wage compression. It seems like we'd fix the problem for now, and then if we hire new people, but how do we avoid doing that again? So if we fix everything and cost of living goes up, 5 years from now, how do we stop the same thing from happening? You've been here 5 years, but now we've moved it up. So you're making the same as a new person. Do you have something built into this so that we don't keep going back to where we are?
Phenomenal question. That's the ongoing maintenance piece. And that's where you as policymakers with your leadership team need to, our recommendation would be that you'd be moving employees based on 2 factors. One would be tenure, and the other is performance tied to the outcomes that you as policymakers drive. What are those desired outcomes? What are those service levels that you want? And then your leadership team delivers that. So let's say, for example, you and I are in the same job position. We have the same job title, and you're a high performer. You come in early, you're meeting expectations, you're knocking it out of the park. And I'm coming in late, right? I'm taking time off, and I'm a problem child, right? So you've got me on a performance improvement plan, and maybe when it gets time for the annual increase, everybody gets a cost of living adjustment. So they get something for staying employed another year. But that other piece of it, maybe I only get a 1% increase. And maybe the opportunity is you can get between 1 and 3.5% per year. You get the full 3.5%. We want to reward you as a high performer. Me, I might get 1%, or I might get an employee improvement plan where all I get is the COLA for, making it another year. But then you start to create separation between employees based on performance and tenure.
Are we not doing that at all now?
Well,
Mr.
Is it
Howard?
only cost of living?
Yeah, let June come forward, because it appears they haven't, yearly they've done these kind of like cost of living, but not a,
Good morning, June Randall, HR Director. You're correct. We
Yeah,
do not
yes.
pay for the merit increases.
Okay, thank
Correct.
you.
It's just the across the board that's given.
Thank you, June.
You're
May I ask one more question while I have the floor, please? You said early that turnover, you estimate the cost at about 50% of whatever that starting salary is. What factors into that? How do you come up with that amount?
The average would be for hourly employees is typically around 50% of their annual salary. You will hear, 1.5% or 1.5 times annual salary when you get to higher positions. And you can base that turnover on the number of open positions relative to your overall employment. But as far as the cost goes, you have onboarding costs, then you have the cost of training. You also have the cost of the vacancy when somebody's not there and those service levels are trying to be maintained. So you might have to increase your overtime, for example, because you have the same amount of service expectations. If you're in public works, the amount of road miles that are being maintained might be the same, but if you have less people there to work, then you might have to pull more overtime. Specifically happens in utilities or in public safety positions where when the phone rings, you can't say, hey, I don't feel like going in today. If there's a lift station or issue or something after hours, those on-call people, because there's fewer of them, they're just working more and more hours. So it's a combination of all of those factors between the onboarding costs, the ongoing training costs, and the vacancy costs. When you combine that together, it can run up pretty quick.
And I think that's an excellent question. I thought the previous question you asked was even better. But I find in our business, you have to have certain certifications with many businesses, and you have to invest that money to get that employee certified, because I find it's about 1.5 to replace somebody. So excellent question, and I really appreciate getting the performance base in there, because what would make me want to perform as good as, say, Commissioner Davis is if I'm getting the same 3% as she is. But if you put that in there for performance, I love that. So I would encourage that. Commissioner Davis, you said, are you done? Commissioner Finnegan. Thank you. Commissioner Davis?
Yes, thank you. Clarification on what you were saying, that you're late, you're lazy, you get a half a point,
In this
no
hypothetical
point, and a
sense,
PIP.
right?
I know, I understand. Can you please give me that example again, but define between COLA and merit?
Sure, and this is just throwing something out for the topic of conversation. But COLA would be based just on year of service. If you were able to stay employed for another year, everybody gets that. That helps against the market. So really what you're trying to do to make sure you don't get behind market and you guard against wage compression is that you're trying to make sure you stay competitive with market. So if we implement this study on the day of implementation, you're competitive with market, but you don't do anything for another 2 years, you can see where you would fall behind, right? So cost of living adjustment would be every pay range goes up.
And
So
I kind of understood all of that, or I do understand all that. What I'm saying is that isn't COLA typically in that already 1 to 3% range? So you threw out 1 to 3%. So that doesn't
Correct.
sound like a merit to me for her to get 3 and you to get 1. That doesn't sound like much of a merit increase.
well, you'd have to determine what the overall eligible annual increase would be between the combination of the two. So some organizations, that might be a total of 3%, and you'd have 1%, and then you're battling over the two. Some might be 5%. It might be to where the merit is every year, but the COLAs are every other year. You'd have to find what is fiscally sustainable, right? Because you have to have that balance between the constituents that you serve and the employees and the service levels that you have to provide. So it can't be fiscally unsustainable. But there does need to be a component where you're to maintain market and to maintain that separation between employees, you have to have a component of overall performance and overall to market, which is the COLA.
And I have 2 other questions. I'm sure you're aware, we only have 2 direct reports. Were there any employees excluded from this, such as our 2 direct reports that are at the very top of the hierarchy? Those 2?
And I don't, when
Were
you say
any
excluded-
employees excluded from, you gave us a total amount to implement this. I'm basically asking
No,
if
that's your entire, that's everything.
that's
Yeah.
everyone, including the county administrator and the county attorney.
Well, the ungraded positions are.
That's what I'm asking. Is there anybody
Yes, the
excluded?
contracted positions for Stephen, the attorney was not included in this.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
Correct.
And then one other question. I really love that you have tuition reimbursement on the table for consideration. I've always been taught that one of the primary reasons that people stick around and are really good team players is if they understand that they have a clear path to advancement. And obviously tuition or further education is only one aspect of that. Has a lot to do with the management structure and how good their supervisor is and that supervisor's supervisor and so forth. So do you address any of that, or is that purely up to our county administrator to foster that throughout the system? Did you have any recommendations for that at all besides tuition?
No, because it really delves more into the area of policy. And one of the deliverables that we had wasn't so much about performance review or staffing or efficiency level work where we would.
I kind of assumed the
that.
answer was no, but I just wanted to ask
Yeah.
it to make sure. That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Sure.
All done.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Kennard.
Yes, thank you. The $2.6 million figure is significantly lower than initial estimates that I had heard. Does that include, that 2.6, does that include benefits and any legacy costs, or is that just salary increases?
Great question. Base salary adjusted for cost of living, Commissioner. That does
Okay.
not include the total costs that would go into the employee like you just mentioned.
So do we have an idea of what that cost is? Because that's the real number.
We do.
Okay.
We do actually. And Aaron could maybe tell us, that'd be great.
And while we're waiting for Aaron, all of 22, the previous administrator told me 0.2 of a mil. And that's just under 3 million.
Yeah.
He must have told me that 10 times. So when I read that you had said that number, I had never heard that number.
Yeah.
Erin Doran, Management and Budget Director. So with the number he mentioned, we had to do an average for workers' comp and retirement because obviously that varies a little depending on the position, but it would be somewhere between $3.7 and $3.8 million with the
Okay,
salary and the.
So
Range.
3.7 to 3.8 is a more realistic number. And my understanding is there's at least talk of a higher contribution requirement for the FRS system coming. Does that 3.7, 3.8 number account for that additional FRS?
So we did use those figures, but we did it as an average. So obviously we went a little bit higher on the average for FRS, knowing that that was coming. So,
All right,
and that's going
very
to be for
good.
everyone.
3.7, 3.8 is still significantly better than what I'd heard.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you went on the higher end to be safe. So we're not going to see the $6 million mark.
With this, the way it is now, no.
Yes. Thank you.
If I could say something, Chair, if I could.
Yes.
One thing, just for clarification too, when Aaron did present the 2023-2024 budget preparation document, within that document, it was the best guesstimate at the time she could utilize. She did list that as a $500,000 in that document. So I think some of that has been out in public consumption as well, which would get you closer to that $6 million mark as well, just for consideration.
Oh.
That it was in the document that was presented before this board.
That's where the number came from.
Correct, on March
Okay.
28, 2023.
Yeah.
So you're aware.
And do you agree that 0.2 mil is a more reasonable?
I think that's great news. I would tell. I mean,
Okay.
this is fantastic. I think they've done a great job, and I've been watching and monitoring the legislation. Very concerned about at the state level. Obviously, we got to build that into it. His job was really to prepare the base salaries. Aaron's been working even up until yesterday, just scrubbing the data. I mean, there's a lot of employees you're looking at to make sure that it's accurate. But I think this is great news today.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner Bays?
Oh, I'm
She hasn't
sorry.
spoke
No,
yet.
Go right ahead. Just quickly, because you had mentioned $600 per month. It was high for insurance, health benefits for dependent,
Yep.
higher than average. From you, I'd like to know what the average is, and I think, and Mr. Howard, I don't know if staff would answer this better. It's if you add one dependent or 8 dependents, it's the same. I'm not sure. Yes. I'm not sure why, and if ever we could find a cost savings on that, because that seems like it shouldn't be that, but if you could answer.
Yeah,
first.
your 629, I think, is the cost. It's split 50-50 between you and the employee for dependent care, and the average is right around 1,400 for your peers, what they're contributing.
So we're
you're
better.
you're more than half behind. No,
Oh, I
they're
thought you're saying we were
for
not
dependent
as
care.
good as.
for the individual care, you're slightly ahead of market because not every one of your peers covers an individual. But what I hear around the country is that it creates this we-they where we both work for the same jurisdiction, and because you're an individual, you don't pay anything. But because I have a family, the costs go up, and the amount of contribution is not sufficient to where it feels as though the amount of money I'm taking home is a lot less. So for example, if I'm a family and I'm working for Citrus County and I'm making $15 an hour, you could argue they're working for healthcare when you look at the costs. And so it's another opportunity. It's not that everyone in your market is so much better than you, but their employees are, in this day and age, especially in the competitive market you're in, they're making their employment decisions based on some of these things. So I just brought that up because I don't want you to get in a position where you're losing out on talent because of a couple $100 a month, right?
I must have misunderstood. I thought you just said that neighboring counties, if you were an employee, you had to pay double for families. Did I misunderstand?
No. Yes, the employer contribution is more than double what you are on average when we average in all the peers together.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. No, it's a good question.
And I work for insurance. I have a family of 4, and I'm thankful for it because it's a whole lot less than I paid in the private sector. But I average about $650 a week. So thankfully, this is what I want to do, but it would be very hard for me if I had to support my family. So I appreciate what you're saying about the insurance, and I'm very thankful to have it, though. Commissioner Bays.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
A couple of questions, and I loved what you said earlier. You said you had to balance to your constituents. So when you're talking about benefits and how we pay, how does it compare here with our constituents.
When you say constituents, you mean those market peers, the other cities
Right.
and counties?
I mean, you gave the analogy, you said in the private marketplace, the insurance and benefits and things that they offer. But if we are in the market, I think we're probably the second largest employer in the county, or maybe the first, I don't know. How does that compare to our peers in the workforce out there? Are we taking away from their employment opportunities because the pay and the benefits and the scales? Or is this just benchmarked against government? And the other question I have is, how do we compare with the local governments, the number of employees per 1,000 in population?
That data, I don't know the per capita data. I could get that for you, but I don't know off the top of my head what the per capita data is. But overall, you're behind market at the midpoint of the salary ranges and at the higher end of the salary ranges, which the midpoint is important because typically by the time somebody has a little bit of tenure, they have a little bit of experience, they should be at the midpoint of their range. They didn't just start their working career. They didn't just start employment in whatever job that they're in. So the fact that you are roughly 12% behind market on average at the minimum, and some positions were more than 25% behind market. And that's, we look at engineering positions, utility-based positions. It wasn't just positions that are at the lower end, the introductory, the maintenance worker ones, the custodians, that type of thing. It's those positions in almost every department where at the midpoint, when somebody would be getting a little bit of experience, and quite frankly, they become very valuable in this market. If you have a little bit of experience and you can make 10 to 15% more for maybe another 20-minute commute on the new Suncoast Parkway, then that's an easy decision for a lot of folks to make. And so to answer your question, overall, you're behind market overall at the midpoint, and then as we get more toward the maximum of the range. As it relates to local governments specifically, you're in a unique market in a unique location, and you're right, you are one of the biggest employers, if not the biggest. But I would say that you have new infrastructure here that allows folks to have a wider net of opportunity for employment that maybe we had even 5 years ago here. And so your competitors now are not the same competitors that you had 10 years ago. And I think you're seeing that play out with a 25% turnover rate and 84 open positions. Bottom line, if you were competitive to market, you wouldn't have 84 openings right now. The market is telling you that you're not competitive.
And was the study done based strictly on the comparisons, just Board of County Commissioner employees across the board, or did that include constitutional officers as well and their employees that fall under the purview of the BOCC?
I don't know if I understand the question, President Commissioner.
When you looked at salaries and what was compared, you're taking just into account the employees of the Board of County Commissioners. It didn't include all the salaries on the, okay.
I gotcha.
And was there, and this is probably more for staff, when we looked at the 21,000 people that leave our county every day for work, did we take a look at what job classifications they're leaving for and what they're getting paid?
Yeah, I don't have that data, but I can give you two real examples from your comments earlier. So 2 employees I personally talked to that just left this county in the last 45 to 60 days. One actually went to another government for more money, more benefits. Another employee actually left to the private sector in Ocala, more benefits, more money. It was interesting because one was private sector and one was actually going to government. I don't have that data, but we could try to see if we could acquire that.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. Do I understand you said you did not survey any of the constitutionals employees when their budget is set by us?
We had 101 benchmark classifications that we observed to market.
Okay.
So
it could be applied to perhaps if the classifications are the same. We have a specific
Correct.
issue. Last year, we brought our sworn officers for the sheriff's office. We approved a budget to bring them up to essentially market rate. Unfortunately, it left out all of the non-sworn employees of the sheriff's department. And, I got a couple of emails about it, and people who are just devastated because they feel like they're desperately underpaid, and then all the sworn got pay grades and pay upgrades. And I said, well, you're going to be in the class and pay study for BOCC. So what
Yeah.
you're saying is that we could apply what is in this study to the constitutionals whose budgets are set by us?
Every employee that we had, that you currently have here, we have slotted into the new pay plan. And based on 101 classifications, we feel like we have moved employees into the pay plan regardless of their department. So
Okay.
that would include all employees.
Okay. That was a good question.
Yeah.
Do you understand that? That the sheriff's employees are not under our jurisdiction?
Yes, but this does not take into account for those employees.
I understand that, but I thought what I'm hearing him say is that we can use what we learned because it's the similar classifications. It's PIO for the sheriff's department. It's, secretarial staff. It's all of that. So it should be able to be transferable theoretically. Thank you.
Any other
Yes.
questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Howard, any questions?
That's all. But I thank you, and again, staff did an amazing job. They've been working tirelessly on this to get here to today, and they were on time, and I think they brought it under budget, it looks like, so that's good news. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, Commissioners.
I really
Grateful.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So what would be the next step with this? We've workshopped this.
We would love to obviously include in the budget, obviously. That's what our plans are next. This, again, we presented this to the board. It was a top high priority, so we would love to include this in the budget as our next steps.
Are you looking for consensus?
We
for
would
that?
love to have consensus.
I completely support this. I know that by paying our employees properly, a good cost of living, that you do save millions. I've been saying that. I hope you employees have heard that. So I am all for putting this, I'm hoping 2/10 of a mil into our budget for this fiscal year.
Thank
This
you.
coming fiscal year. So that's my opinion. I'm not sure where everybody else stands. But if you're looking for consensus.
I can give mine. I think that this county runs as good as we have employees. And we're missing quite am I not close enough? We're missing quite a few employees, and I have learned in my short time here that staff makes Citrus County go round. So, and like you said, good news under what may have been anticipated. So let's get the best and the brightest and retain the best and the brightest so they don't want to leave. We want people that have roots here. So I'm all for it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Davis?
I completely concur with both of my fellow commissioners who've spoken on this so far. I'm 100% in favor of it. I do have a little cautionary issue with the constitutional budgets that are going to be coming to us if they put their employees on the same pay scale as what we're implementing here. That number just went up. So we need to keep an eye on that because we can't break the bank, but we got to pay what's market rate. We just have to.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bays?
I'll support this. I would also just like staff to come back and see what kind of information that we can have as comparisons with our constitutional officers and see where they're at with the $15 minimum wage, if they implemented that into their budgets already and we're just behind the 8 ball. So I would like to know that. Again, I do support this. I appreciate what my fellow commissioners to the right of me have said. I think it's long overdue. I think we've kind of kicked this can around for a number of years. So I do support getting our employees. I think a lot of times what the general public doesn't realize, we vote on these budgets. We vote on the constitutional officers' budgets. And I think over the years, what I've seen is that the Board of County Commissioners kind of takes the back seat in a lot of instances that we kind of sacrifice our employees for the other divisions. But now's the time. We're a growing county. We're going to have, every day we get a phone call with crisis, and I think we need to get our staffing right, and we need to hire the best and the brightest and retain them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kennard?
Yeah, well, it looks like we've already got consensus. We'll make it unanimous. I'll support it as well, with a few concerns. I would not support an additional number of holidays. If I think what the last discussion we had about this was having a degree of flexibility. If employees wanted a specific holiday off, maybe allowing them to change out for one of the holidays that they currently have. But I'm not a fan of paying people not to work. I would be interested in hearing the total cost of increasing the employer contribution for dependents, and as well as an estimated cost for the tuition expenses. I'm not going to support either one of those out of the gate without having a number attached to it. But overall, the plan in general, I've said all along that if we're going to pay for the study, we need to be prepared to implement it, and I'm ready to do that. My hope is that the cost of this is something that if not all of it, the majority of it can be covered by the additional developments that have occurred in the county, the additional valuations of real estate, and we don't have to increase the millage rate to cover it. So we'll see as those numbers start showing up over the next month or two, what money is there to cover this stuff, but I'm on board with implementing it.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
Commissioner Bays?
If we're going to revisit this, the other thing that I would like to look at, it's my understanding that there's 11% of our positions that are under the $15 minimum wage. If we're going to revisit this and bring some numbers back, that would be something else that I would like to see how we implement that and just get our employees at the $15.
Thank you. Anything else? At this time, then, I would like to open it up to the public. If you would like to come forward and speak, we'll give you 3 minutes. Unless you have a letter on file, then we will give you 5. Please direct all your comments to me, the chairman. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm only going to use 3 today.
I'm sorry, and please give me your name. And
My name
where
is
you
Tim
live.
Gilbert. I'm from Inverness. I had a 5-minute battle ready for you, but you guys all did the right thing. Thank you for supporting this. I do mean it. A couple questions, though, from last night in researching this. I took a random job position from the county that's being posted right now. Okay, so I could apply for it. I could do it. I'm not going to say the title or the hourly wage. I simulated it with about 30 houses, give or take. Distances, travel, gas, food, Wi-Fi, etc. That job position cannot live in this county. It's data. I just wanted to say that. That job position cannot live in this county unless they're living with mom or a friend.
Or a second job.
Or, yeah, exactly. They're not working full-time for the government. I want to change that. I want people to want to work for the government, right? As weird as that sounds. I think it is a good paying job. It is good benefits. Ms. Finnegan, you brought up the dependencies and everything like that. My job, for example, I can throw 30 dependents on it and I don't change. So I think that's big for us younger families. But please keep that in mind. Yeah, and you guys did a good job supporting this. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to close the public comment portion of this meeting, this workshop. We do have a regular meeting at 1 p.m. today right here in this room. And if there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn this workshop. Thank you.